Hello and welcome to the Slow the Fuck Down podcast with Glow London and The Drum. I'm Emma Harris, Chief of Glow London and founder of the Slow the Fuck Down movement. In May 22, I had a completely out of the blue cardiac arrest and beat odds of 96-4, surviving unscathed. Since then, I've been committed to sharing the perspective I'm now blessed with, that many of us are wasting the precious time we have on this planet with unsustainable pace and stress. In each episode, I'll welcome some fabulous guests onto the show to share their stories of how slowing down or not has affected their lives, their teams, and their businesses. Let's get started. For those of you that are listening, welcome to Slow the Fuck Down. We are in front of a live studio audience. Always wanted to say that. We are here at the Marketing Academy Assembly Day. If anyone listening doesn't know what the Marketing Academy is, look it up. But we're basically in front of an audience of highly talented and highly selected marketing talent, the top 1% in the world, I always say. And yeah, today I have two brilliant guests. We are in the middle of season 2. If you haven't listened to season 1 or season 2, first of all, don't tell me, because you'll get told off. But second, please do. We have had incredible guests in season 2. We've had Alfred Samba, John Evans, who'll be here later, Claudine Collins, Lottie Unwin and Joe Glover. That was a good one, very emotional. Amy Keane, to name but a few. So do listen in. Slow the fuck down. If any of you hasn't listened to the podcast, basically each episode we have incredible guests who share their vulnerability and their wisdom around how they're managing this crazy fucking world that we're in at the moment. If there's ever a time they haven't slowed down, sharing their stories, sharing their coping mechanisms, it's a thing of beauty. It's usually both hilarious and emotional. No pressure, chaps. And it's doing really bloody well. So listen, share, like and subscribe. Is that how I'm supposed to say it? Like and subscribe. And yeah, tell everyone about it. So anyway, welcome to Slow the Fuck Down Live. Today I am delighted to be, as I said, coming to you live. We're at VaynerMedia, and we are joined today by two brilliant guests, two phenomenal leaders who are here to share their wisdom and vulnerability, and what I'm anticipating to be two very different journeys, but with lots of similar perspectives. So please give a massive welcome to our guests, Timo Armoo and Steve Challouma. So, a bit more of an intro. So, Timo built and sold Fanbytes, one of the most influential Gen Z marketing companies of the decade, reshaped how brands show up in culture. He is also a Sunday Times best-selling author, life goals. His journey from South London council estate to selling a multi-million-pound business at before 30 is incredibly inspiring, and there's lots of lessons for anyone building their own business today. And then we've got TMA fellow Steve, who spent 30 years, we were talking before and Henry went, yeah, I wasn't born then. 30 years building and scaling some of Europe's most loved, thanks Henry, brands from Unilever through to leading as CMO at Nomad Foods, brands like Birdseye, Aunt Bessie's, and also, and I said this to Steve and he got very embarrassed, but he's, in terms of what we stand for at the Academy, we're all about human-led leadership, and Steve really represents that. He's always led with his heart and always had a people-first approach to growth. So welcome to the podcast, Timo and Steve. Big round of applause for them. Woo! Okay, so those of you that have watched the podcast will know that we always start with the same question. The world is completely bonkers right now and seems to be getting more bonkers by the day, and a lot of people struggling. We heard some stats from Alex before about how many people are, feeling stressed out, facing burnout. Why do you think we are where we are today? I start with you, Steve.
Sure. Hi everyone. Delighted to be on. Thanks for asking me on the podcast, Emma.
Pleasure.
So I think there's two things really. So I think there's micro factors and macro factors. If I can sort of break those down. So the micro factors is the pressure we put on ourselves. So I'm sure this will come up a lot, but yeah, as you said, I started 30 years ago, 1996. and it was a simpler world. So LinkedIn didn't exist. That came in 2003. Instagram didn't come till halfway through my career, 2010, right? 15 years after I started. And it's a double-edged sword, right? And marketing is a double-edged sword because there's so much inspiration and stories that people share and successes, but that creates a huge kind of expectation of just being superhuman. Yeah, so, if you read everything on LinkedIn, you're supposed to be like a AI ninja and brilliant at performance marketing and social media mogul, and you're supposed to be posting, and it's just, you create, I didn't have that when I started. So you create this pressure on yourself, and then beyond that, it's around life as well. So, you should be exercising and cold water swimming, and the latest thing I keep on seeing is there high rocks. Does anyone do high rocks? You're nutters, whoever you are doing high rocks. I'd never touch that. So you just have to be this superhuman being, when actually the most human thing is to admit that, well, I can't be all of those things, and just be happy and row your own race. And is there any Radiohead fans here? Great. Well, their album just after I started working, OK Computer, if you know it, nods. Yeah, there's a song called Fitter Happier. Do you know that? Some know it. It's like an electronic voice. It's dystopian. It goes fitter, happier, gym 3 times a week, get on with your contemporary assaults. And it's like, actually, Radiohead had quite a good vision of how things have turned out. So that's the micro, and then the macro is, it's just, when I started, and I'm not making any political judgment, you had Tony Blair coming in and Bill Clinton in the States, and they made mistakes and they weren't perfect, but it was just a bit more of a centrist, normal sort of world. And it's just gone a bit nuts, and just the context that we're operating in. I mean, I was in the food industry and I've had to contend with, just in the last 6 years, Brexit, which is nuts, inflation, the Russia-Ukraine war, which impacted so many different materials, inflation. So all these big climate change, that's affected yields on vegetables and things like that. And you're having to operate in that context. So it's just a combination of that internal pressure that we put on ourselves, but then operating in a far more difficult economic, geopolitical environment, just has risks putting you into a spin.
It's a shitstorm, I think, is a summary.
That would be the quick way of saying it, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the comedian. I was watching something the other day and she was like, I'm lost. This is Irish woman, I won't do an Irish accent, but she's like, I'm lost. Are we doing Botox? Are we not doing Botox? Are we intermittent fasting? Are we eating 20 grams of protein? And we're like, I'm absolutely fucking lost. Which way am I? And it's true. Am I doing collagen? Am I doing, it is. It's just complete overwhelm. Yes. Too much information. Yes. My mum would say, wake up, have a cup of coffee and a fag and get on with it.
Perfect.
Timo, why do you think we're in this madness?
That's funny. So I guess I'll speak, on behalf of the Gen Z millennial cohort, because that's an audience that I know well. And probably the biggest reason why I think we are in a period of chaos now is because of something I call comparison fatigue. And we are just constantly looking at people's highlight reels and assuming that is their entire life. And probably the biggest change that has made me happier in the last 6 months is not being on my phone from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then from 8 p.m. to midnight. Because then I don't have basically other people's thoughts and experiences and, oh my God, you should be doing this, 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 and that. And I've said it to quite a few of my friends, and every single one of them who's done that has ended up being just significantly happier. So I don't know how many people here have ever done a digital detox by show of hands, right? It could be as simple as just for a weekend, you just don't go on your phone. And something weird happens to your brain the first time you start grabbing for your phantom phone, because your brain is so used to where's the dopamine source. And then eventually by Saturday and early Sunday, you then just go, the world is actually a lot bigger than this 7-inch screen. And you just find yourself being happier. And so for me, the single biggest reason why a lot of my generation are all mentally screwed up is because we are constantly seeking validation and direction from strangers who don't even know that we exist.
I absolutely love that. One of the things that I talk about and Slow the Fuck Down is this quest. This quest that we're on, that I've actually been on since I was in my 20s and maybe earlier, which actually wasn't to do with the phone. It was just this quest for more. Like, when I get there, when I earn that, I'll be happy. When I get that job, I'll be happy. When my business has hit that turnover, when I'm thin, whatever the fuck it is. You never get there, right? And I do think that social media, the paranoid comparison, makes it 100 times worse. Because not only have you got your own version of I'm not good enough, you've got all these other perfect versions of other people that isn't true anyway. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, the when I get there thing is so real, because your brain is basically like a reward-seeking mechanism. It's like, okay, I've done this, now what, now what? And I remember saying to my team, because you said the Sunday Times bestseller thing, right? And I remember when we were about to push out the book, my team were like, what's the goal? And then someone said, #1 Sunday Times bestseller, right? And I think they were expecting me to also go like, yeah, guys, #1 Sunday Times bestseller. And I just said, well, let's just do the best that we can. And what's going to happen is we might get #1. We also might not, but I promise you, in the next week, you're going to go back to however happier and fulfilled you were before. And I know this because I remember when I was running Fanbyte, I was just driven by the exit. I was like, when we sell this company, I would be rich and my life would be different and everything would be amazing and blah, 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 blah. And then the angels will come from the heavens and they will sing my name and suddenly I will feel better about myself. And then I remember when we signed the deal, I went to bed and the next day I went to Sainsbury's to buy an apple. And I remember being in Sainsbury's almost thinking, all right, where's the choir? Where's the press? Where's the people saying, Timo, you've made it? And I realized that even though my world had changed, the outside world had not changed. And I think having that experience and also a few other things made me very cognizant of whatever achievement, whether it's the book, whether it's, selling more companies, whether it's speaking somewhere, whether it's anything, there is like a base level of happiness which an external thing can't really lift. And anytime I tell any of my portfolio CEOs or anyone, they're almost a bit shocked. And then they come to realize that is the truth. And as a result, they don't look at any external thing for their happiness.
It's so true, and it's a choice.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Alex was talking about locus control, being external or internal and choosing that, and it's a similar theme. Absolutely love that. I think I know the answer to this, Timo, but Steve, how are you doing? Obviously, you've left Nomad. How long ago was that now?
That was the end of the year.
Right, so how are you doing? How is life for you at the moment?
It's brilliant. I didn't know what to expect because, I had a straight 30-year run. It's the only business I've been in, although it's changed a lot. I'm sure we'll come to that later. But I was 5 days in the office guy. I just liked that separation of home and work, even if I was by myself. So I was really routine and, used to a kind of... It was really interesting seeing... earlier those quarters, although getting up at 5 o'clock is not, that would be taking it too far.
Yeah, no.
So I was a bit afraid of what it would feel like to not have that, but it's been amazing, to be honest. It's been liberating. I've kept very busy doing things that I didn't have the chance to do, meeting people, thinking about the future. The only thing I miss from it is the people, to be honest, because when you've worked somewhere that long and you develop a great team and, they're more than colleagues, they're friends as well. And you see them, you get involved in that with them and their lives as well and their families and you care for them. And, that's the only thing that I miss is that day-to-day kind of friendship and companionship from colleagues that I built really deep relationships with. But aside from that, and it's just been brilliant meeting people, and they've introduced me to other people, and just having time to come to things like this. So it's been fantastic, actually. I've loved it.
Love it. I remember leaving Eurostar, and that was the hardest thing. And someone said to me, just find a different tribe. It doesn't have to be a team that work for you. It's just making sure your tribe. And I have to say, there's a lot of the people in the room, I would say, in my tribe. You build a different thing. Obviously, I've got a smaller team. In fact, one of my team from Eurostar, where's Daniela? She's here now. So, you keep the people that mean the most and just build it in a different way. But I remember that being hard, so I'm feeling
and I mean, the other thing, I've rediscovered an aspect of myself as well, because when I started my career, I was very introvert, actually, and quite shy. And over time, you kind of learn to become more confident and more comfortable in rooms like this morning, when you're sort of having to break into a conversation like I did with some of you this morning, and that used to terrify me. But actually, having some time out has allowed me to spend more time with myself. And so I've... one of my passions is cinema. I've told a couple of you this. So my wife, maybe she didn't want me at the home too much. She bought me a 6-month pass to our local cinema.
Genius.
And so January, I went to 12 movies in January.
Wow.
Right? And most of the time, by myself, 11 o'clock on a Thursday, seeing like 28 years later, the zombie film, or, one battle after another,
It's
or
like
whatever.
private hire.
Yeah, with like 2 other people with like overcoats and just a bit. So that, and then no, that's a bit weird. Sorry. And then I had my overcoat as well, but not enough. And then the other thing I did, just to kind of advance my skills as well, I did a course as well. So some of you will have heard of this, and I've told some of you this. The Oxford Business School AI program for 6 weeks. And I sort of, through those 2 very different things, I rediscovered spending time with myself. And I found that really energizing. That's been fantastic, just to kind of, I wouldn't say enjoy just kind of get energy from my own company and rediscover that. You kind of lose that being in business.
I love that, and I think it's a shame you weren't able to do that while you were in the job. And for those of you listening to Alex before and hear some of the questions he asked us, if reconnecting with yourself is one of those things, maybe do some daytime cinema. Timo, how are you doing?
How is Timo doing? That's a great question.
People don't ask that enough, do they?
They don't. How is Timo doing? The answer would have probably been different if we were having this conversation 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I basically had to confront the fact that that I have a very interesting brain construction. And so I was with a psychiatrist for a while and a hypnotist for a while. And basically, for a while, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety. And so as a result, I'd like tick a lot, and it then developed into Tourette's. And eventually, after having that diagnosis, I then understood what to do with my emotions and my feelings. So if you'd asked me 3 months ago, I'd probably have said like 5, probably even 3 actually. And then now I'd say like a 8 out of 10, because one of the best things that I have done is not be, what's the word I'm looking for, is to not run away from my spicy brain. I think because, I guess, my external persona is very much like the leader of teams, the entrepreneur. Last year, I own a PE firm, and we own media brands. And last year, I did 47 million a year. And I am out here being like raising money, doing all these things. But then every time I'm feeling this like dreaded sense of deep chest pain, shoulder pain, like everything just feels like my body's like screaming and saying like, come on, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. But I was just like, no, I'm gonna be this like hard charging guy who just goes, makes it happen, etc. And it was only 3 months ago, the kind of catalyst was I was about to leave the house and I just had this panic attack. It was like, I started to tick, so I'd like tick like this, and then I tick like that a lot, and then I was on the floor just like ticking a lot. And then it's like, all right, Timo, you need some help now. And so then I realized that it was like this pressure that I've just put on myself for so long of just like do. And now I'm kind of chill. And there's so many things I learned in the last, probably the biggest thing that I ever did was pay a hypnotist. And when people hear that, they think it's like someone who goes, and now go to sleep. No, it's not at all. It's someone who almost helps you to rewire your brain patterns and rewire the stories that you tell yourself. And so there's like so many techniques, and we'll come to it later, but there's so many mental techniques that I use every single day. Every day I probably use about 6 or 8 of them, which mean that I don't get my brain so fired up, which was definitely an inhibitant in the past. So now I'm 8 before I was a 3.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I know often you don't sort of, share that sort of vulnerable side to yourself, and it's so important for people to hear, because you're right, you look at you and go, this guy's, 30 and has achieved so much, but the body keeps the score.
The body does keep the score.
Absolutely. I talk about the fact that I don't remember what I meant before I got ill. I remember being on this mad, I had to treble the size of the business every year, and if I didn't do that, then I was failing. I don't even know what the fuck I meant. I couldn't give a shit, as long as my lovely husband who's here today, as long as my family are okay and I'm okay, who gives a shit? What's it all for? I don't actually remember what I meant. So I love the fact that I'm sorry that it got to that stage, but and hopefully the idea is that we talk about this stuff to stop other people getting to that stage. Steve, has there ever been a time for you when you've kind of hit a wall and forgotten to slow down?
Not so much, but my journey has been a bit slower and more gradual. So it was about 20 years before I had my first board position as a marketing director for Birdseye. And so therefore I had a lot of, I felt very prepared for it, and I'd been through a lot up until then. But I think what I learned before, and that was a high pressure job, but I'd matured by then, and I felt ready for it. And what I'd learned by then is just to put things in the right perspective. So there's a phrase which I really came to hate, right, and rally against, which is, what's keeping you up at night? Right? So you used to get bosses or senior people, what's keeping you up at night? That's almost like breeding there should be something, anxiety in it. And I've sort of learnt, by the way, Timo's got an amazing book that I've listened to, which in itself is soothing and calming. But it's really funny because when I've been really stressed, and sometimes you do have a sleepless night, right? And I've got 3 kids, and my middle child, who's brilliant, he's very chilled. And it's funny because he says this to me all the time, and it's in your book, one of your cheat codes, which is, it's not that deep. I think you might have said it in one of your podcasts as well. It's like, Dad, I might get annoyed with him at something. It's like, Dad, stop deeping it. It's not that deep, right? And he's actually, little chief perspective officer there, It's just like, he's right, and what I find is, oh God, we've lost market share this month, and I'll get a tough call. But then 48 hours later, it's fine. 90% of the time, it's fine, and you just crack on, and as a team, you deal with it.
Yeah.
So I've been, I'm more like the tortoise journey rather than the hare, if you like. Everyone's rose their own pace and everything, and that's fine, and I'm happy with that. But that's helped me. Going a bit slower has helped me, I think.
Yeah, I think if I ever had a tattoo, I would never have one because I'm scared of needles. But if I ever did, it would just say, it's not that deep.
There you go.
Because I think so many times in business and in professional life, things just seem like the most catastrophic thing ever. And then you literally just say to yourself, it's not that deep, and it just puts into so much perspective. Like, I remember there was a time in Fanbytes, and I share this story in the book, where we were running out of money. We had an investor who was going to invest 500K into the business, and I was like, great, he's agreed, blah, blah, blah. And then on a Thursday, I get a call from him, and I'm expecting the call to be something like him saying, you know, just, can we confirm bank details or something, right? And it's not. He says, Timo, I can't invest. I'm like, why? And he says, well, he can't invest because he's having dinner with someone who told him that TikTok, at that time we were doing a lot of campaigns on TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese spying app, and he doesn't want to support China. And I'm like, how the fuck, like, where was that in the business plan, you know? And so my first thought was,
fuck.
Yeah, was that. And then I said, okay, cool, all right. And then I remember I was alone in the office. It was like 10:30 p.m. And I just shouted really loud. I said, it's not that deep. And there was almost like my brain just reset and went, cool. There'll be a ton of other people who would give us money. And eventually, within 2 weeks, we got that 500K from 3 other investors. Someone put in 100, 200, blah, blah. And I remember just in that moment almost being like, I thought this moment would destroy the business. But it didn't, because I gave myself a lot of perspective. And I think just that phrase, using it in times where maybe you apply for a job or you go for something or you have a presentation and maybe you like fumble over the words a bit, people are gonna forget. And like in less than 48 hours, people just go, yeah, cool. Because everyone is bothered with what's going on in their head rather than yourself.
I love that. It's just business. It's just peas.
It is.
It's, I mean, you know, it's important, but it's just
peas.
peas. I mean, I say to all our clients, you're not operating on babies. We're selling shit. We're making shareholders rich, unless we're running our own business and we're trying to make ourselves rich or less poor. But yeah, we're not operating on babies. It's not that deep. Love that. Chief Perspective Officer stealing that.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and you both share your stories, right, is your health and your family and things like that. They overweigh everything else.
100%.
And we all have, you know, my oldest son, I've got 3 kids. My oldest son, 2 years ago, we discovered he had a spine condition called scoliosis, where your spine curves. And he needed very urgently, he had to be opened up and 28 screws in his back, and he had to relearn how to stand up and walk and all that kind of thing. That is, that's
that shit matters.
That shit matters. And, so when you have sort of personal things like that, that puts everything else 100%. In a different perspective.
Pillar 1 of Slow the Fuck Down, work out what matters and prioritise it. And it sounds really fucking obvious, but we don't do it. We get lost in this well. Timo, I mean, I think you might have answered some of this, but yeah, you've built, scaled, sold, invested. If you don't know Timo's story, do buy the book, do listen to his TEDx, whatever it is. But honestly, the story of you're born here, spent 10 years in Ghana, came back to live with your dad in a council flat in South London, went, how do I get out of this? What's my path? And from 14, you were looking for ways to do it. You had the tutor business. I love that story, where you thought, okay, great, I can tutor. I did all right in a maths test. I'm going to start tutoring. And then employed loads of other tutors. And then suddenly they realised they could cut out the middleman. So that failed. But, all the lessons you've learned. When you hear, I mean, you are not someone who I would connect naturally with Slow the Fuck Down. So when I first said, will you be on it, what was your instinctive reaction to that?
Well, because I had a panic attack 3 months ago, I was like, yes, I will be on it. But beforehand, no, I would not have. Because I think I just equated slowing down with losing.
Yeah. I
just was, come on, I see that and just think, come on, boys, this is just, suck it up, mate, But then eventually, of course, that was not the case. I think probably the single biggest thing that I have done, both personally, professionally, has been to say, I am not my emotions. That has probably been the biggest thing ever. Like anytime I feel like super excited about something, I go, cool. I am experiencing the feeling of excitement. But at the current moment, it is going to change, and that's fine. or if I'm feeling sad or if my chest feels tight, etc., I go, cool, I am not my emotions. And that has just helped me to just be so much more productive. And I really wish like more people did that. I wish in schools they basically taught emotions 101. And it was just understanding what goes on in your brain when you feel certain things. Because we have a whole generation of people, unfortunately, who mentally are probably the most like screwed up generation because their feelings are being dictated by a 6-inch screen that they are always glued to.
I agree. I've actually taken Slow the Fuck Down to my daughter's school. Just to try. I wish people had told me this shit when I was 14, and just to try and explain to them your thoughts and feelings, they are something you can change. I mean, I'm not negating the struggles we have with our mental health, but evidence. Let's take a breath. That's what Slow the Fuck Down is. And it's not about doing less. It's about growth. But it's about making decisions based on, like you're saying, not emotions, not feelings, but actually what's happening in the present moment. Let's just take a moment. We live most of our lives in a past we can't change or a future that hasn't happened yet. We're in our fight or flight. We're catastrophizing. We're full of cortex. We're stressed out. Stop. What actually matters, let's focus on that. What is the data? What is the evidence of the things I'm making decisions on? So yeah, I agree. Let's put that in my goals for the future, is that we do something with schools to make kids understand this stuff. Steve, 30 years in FMCG. I started my career in FMCG selling alcohol. You'd be unsurprised to hear. It was a natural path. But the pace of FMCG and retail is second to none. How did you talked about your sort of slower, more tortoise-like career. How did you create thinking space for you and the team in that sort of high pressure environment?
I think there's a couple of things I'd say to that. So firstly, reasonably early on in my career, 10 years in, so there's still quite a lot. Birdseye was sold to a private equity company, and the new CEO came in. His name was Martin Glemm. Don't know if any of you have heard of him. He was an amazing leader, and he was a marketeer, right? And he introduced this concept that's really stuck with me. And he was like, if you've got a balanced life, you need to, do a bit of exercise, eat well, spend time with people you love, have friends. You have to have a healthy lifestyle. And then he translated that to marketing. He said, if you're going to be a good marketeer, you can't be stuck behind your desk. You have to live a healthy marketing lifestyle. This was his idea. So that means going out and meeting your consumers, going to stores and seeing your products on the shelf, meeting experts in the field, in food, chefs and all that kind of thing. And otherwise you won't be an effective marketeer. And when you do that, you're spending time away from your desk, it's energizing, and it's where my best ideas have come from. So, example, when I was a junior, senior brand manager, so reasonably junior, used to, I love roaming around supermarkets. I can spend hours. It's a bit strange, but I went down the condiments aisle. This is a long time ago, and
with your big coat on. With
my big coat. I don't want this reputation to stick. Okay, this is bad. Please edit that out. I won't get a job otherwise. Do you remember Reggae Sauce?
Yeah.
Yeah, from Dragon's Den. And
Levi Roots.
I was managing chicken for Birdseye at that time, chicken char grills, which is this marinated. And I thought, wow, that's quite top of mind, and that would be great.
Collab.
Yeah, collab. So I wrote an email to Peter Jones' people, and he came in and we launched a Reggae Sauce char grill, and it did like 8 million quid in its first year with very little media. By the way, it didn't have any actual reggae sauce. We tried it with his actual sauce and it wouldn't freeze. There was too much sugar in it. So we had to create our own version, and he was perfectly all right because he got really nice royalties from it. But if me and my team, there's many examples, didn't spend time away from our desks, looking at what's happening out there, food trends, we wouldn't have picked up on those sort of ideas, because you don't sometimes, I think you cover this in your book, you don't have to, you can borrow ideas and just bring them into your business. You don't always have to be original. So that's a primary way. But then the other thing around speed in FMCG, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because there is a pressure to be fast and the new trend and all the rest of it. But sometimes speed gets confused with rushing, right? And so there's been many occasions where there's been pressure. Shit, we need to get on this trend, the meat-free or whatever it is, rush something out, and you cut corners. And, either the product, the consumer will vote. Consumers aren't going out there saying, look at Birdseye, they're being so slow to enter this market segment, right? They don't really, they don't really care. And sometimes it can, what's the phrase? It's like more haste, less speed. It's better to do things properly and more considered than rushing something out, and then you're spending all this effort afterwards sweeping up the mess. That's not to say you're not fast, and in a big business, one of the issues is more complex. You need to get more and more people on board, and you can procrastinate a bit, and things get stuck in the mud. Versus having a smaller business, you can be faster. But I think it's to do it purposefully. Go fast when it's purposeful to do so.
And slow down to think. I think that's the bit.
Slow down
to do the thinking, which then speeds you up. The other day, I had a moment where I had about 3 minutes in between meetings, and I was trying to make myself a coffee, and I was trying to fill the water up while I was putting the coffee beans in. I made such a mess. The water spilt. Everything. It took so much longer than it needed to. And it was such a moment. I'm like, you're not practicing what you preach, Harris. This is a classic. More haste, less speed. Yep. Mum was right after all. Timo, one of the things you talk about is alter egos and having different people that you call on in moments. Something anyone listening to Slow the Fuck Down will know I talk about Inside Out and that beautiful film, which is the personification of emotions, and how I've got Kick-Ass, who's brilliant and terrifying and wonderful, and I've got Negative Ninny, and I've got Risk Manager. Who have you got up there, and how do you call upon them in different situations?
So the story of the alter ego thing is quite interesting. So when I was 24, when I was still doing Fanbyte, I had this opportunity to do a talk by ITV, and it had 2,000 people there, and I was doing the keynote, and I was shitting myself. Before that, I've done a bunch of talks, but they were, maybe 100 people, 200 people. This was 2,000 people, keynote talk for ITV. Everyone in the crowd is a potential customer for Fanbyte. And so I was really, really scared. And what happened was, just before I was about to go on stage, there was this woman, short woman, pink hair. She was the person who was going to announce me on stage. And then she says, what should I call you? Should I call you Tim, Timothy, Timo? And it was the first time that I had heard me being called Timo. And in my mind, I went, Timo. Timo isn't scared of speaking to 2,000 people. Timo goes out and these people give him a standing ovation. This is just easy. And so in that moment, I then said Timo. And that was the creation of what I call my alter ego. And I went on stage, I absolutely rocked it. Then I ended up getting a standing ovation for 2 minutes. I was like, whoa, And that just confirmed the alter ego. And if you think about it, this is actually a very well-known thing. Beyonce has an alter ego, Sasha Fierce, right? You could even say, one of my favorite artists is Drake. Drake is Aubrey Graham, but he's known as Drake, right? And they're all different, almost personas that they put on, which give them a certain characteristic, feature, a certain mindset. And I have, from that point on, 24 up until effectively a year ago, I was like Timo, who was the entrepreneur who made shit happen. And I encourage every single person here to have some version of that. And it's like, who is the version of you who is not scared to do the thing that you always wanted to do? And now that I'm in my, private equity bag, now I've had to be Timo, the capital allocator. It's not as sexy, but...
that is pretty good. That is pretty sexy.
Getting hot, aren't you?
It's pretty sexy.
because now I have a portfolio of companies. They each have their own CEOs. And when they come to me, rather than me being the person who has the answers, which is pretty much what I identified with, I'm now the person who asks the best questions. And so as a result, I think about, all right, you say we should deploy 100K for this influencer campaign. All right, well, let's break it down like how a true like PE CEO would do. And that has been a very transformational thing for me. I'm going to say two like very practical things that you can also do. One of the highest ROI things that I've done anytime I'm working with a CEO or someone in my team who wants to do something is I get them to write a one-pager document which says what could go wrong. And one of the really powerful things that does is that it gets them to self-analyze and critique the thing that they're about to do, and then as a result be able to make sure it doesn't go wrong. And then the second thing is you can actually use AI for this. You can effectively go into Claude and say something like, I am about to do this thing. You are a world-class marketer. I want you to tell me the 10 things that could go wrong with this. And that single biggest decision has meant every single time that we launch a new product, hire a new person, go into a new market, it just means that we invariably succeed. And that has come as a result of me seeing myself less as this hard-charging entrepreneur who goes in with just passion and drive, and actually realizing that there's a very like systematic, strategic way for you to build a business, which the OGs, people who have run several businesses before, the OGs know, and now I'm downloading that into my businesses. So that's been the development of my alter ego, and I would highly encourage every single person here to have one. Just get down on a sheet of paper, almost go like, give it a name, give her or him a name, and say what are all the characteristics that person has, and then start to live that every day. You end up finding a lot of success through that.
I love that. I'm going to build on that and say also find the ones that are afraid and that are stopping you, because they're also part of you and they're trying to protect you. And by embracing them, giving them a name, identifying their positive intention, then you're acknowledging them, and then it's about giving the mic to the one you need in the moment.
Yeah.
So I would also say, and I love that idea of what could go wrong. Let's ask Claude. I love that. Put your ego aside. Be a world-class marketeer. We are all world-class marketeers. So be me. I love that. I would also say, what's the best case scenario? Ask that as well, because we all know how our belief systems create our feelings, behaviors, and outcomes. So if there's a feeling that it might go wrong, we might create that. So add the best case scenario as well. Brilliant. I love this tangible advice. I've got last couple of questions from me. Steve, if you could have your time again, how would you lead differently? Is there anything you would lead or do differently? But as we're a bunch of leaders, particularly with that in mind.
Firstly, I wish I had a book like Timo's. And by the way, I'm not Steve, I'm Steve-O now.
Okay.
That's what there's no such thing. So please refrain.
Love it. Okay, Steve-O.
Sorry. Well, I think there's just something around confidence, being bolder, seeking out more advice and counsel, and earlier on, probably. Because at times I was a little bit reluctant to come forward, even in advanced stages of my career. I was ambitious. I got to a great place in CMO of a big $3 billion business, but I needed support to get there. And just one example story of that: I was marketing director for UK Bird's Eyes about 10 years ago. And I was speaking with my wife, and she said, I told her I've got a career conversation with my boss. He was a brilliant boss, best boss I've had. And, well, you should tell him you could do his role, right? And I didn't firstly, I didn't necessarily see myself, because that role was a general manager, actually running the UK business, a 900 million business, 800 million business. But I had a career conversation with my boss, and I made a little flippant comment. I said, I was speaking to Katie, it's my wife's name. She said, maybe I should go, I said it really like gingerly, like, she said, maybe I should think about your job, like that. And he said to me, your wife's giving you the best advice she could have, and I've been waiting for you to come with this.
Love that.
And then from there, he built he worked with me, built my confidence, and reasonably shortly afterwards, I succeeded him as the general manager, and I could do it. So it's just that sort of bit of more courage, probably at times, to sort
And always listen to your wife?
I always do that anyway.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, she's amazing. I always listen to her anyway. Yeah, but yeah, that would be one thing, just to be a bit bolder and a bit more courageous in coming forward. But a lot of the other thing, one thing you learn with time is business in itself, in my opinion, isn't stressful, right? It's people that usually create the stress. Lots of nods. That's good. And I'm simplifying here, right? Steve-O is simplifying here. Sorry, no, I'm not going to get him.
It's going to stick.
Yeah, oh God, great. You have like pot fillers and pot drainers, right? So people you want to spend time with, and when you have a discussion or a meeting with them, they fill your pot. Some people are actually physically called pot fillers, and they're a bit embarrassed. But yeah, you come out of the session feeling energized. And then there's others that are pot drainers, who are never happy, and they're a bit of a downer on stuff, and they drain your energy. And so you're constantly managing your energy pot. Ideally, you don't want to drain it completely. But what I've learned over time is you can't ignore. The natural thing to do is to just spend your time with pot fillers and avoid pot drainers. But you can't do that. You can't do that. And what I've learned in leadership is lean into the pot drainers, because, well, firstly, you need them to make business happen, and avoiding them won't help the situation. You need to understand what is it that is giving them this attitude, because there can be very valid reasons. It could be their capability. They might not have clarity on results. So actually try, filling their pot a bit and get empathy with them and support them. And then and then you've got to check yourself, and question you can ask yourself, what am I with my team? Am I a pot filler or am I a pot drainer? And it's probably, no one's perfect, right? There's some people whose pot you fill, and there's probably some people who you drain as well. But the more, ironically, the more you can be on the positive, a pot filler, it's not just about being nice and happy. When you get to that, you can have more difficult conversations without falling out. So, if you can get to that positive relationship, then bad news comes out quicker. If it's just you're avoiding and it's this pot draining thing, the unsaids don't get said.
There's something you said there that I absolutely adored and loved, which is when you when you went to your boss, I guess, and you said that you wanted that, and he was like, I was waiting for you to do that. One of my doctrines in life is you should always assume positive intent. You should just always assume positive intent. And sometimes, especially, let's say we are negotiating something, we always see it as a very adversarial thing. We see it as like it is me versus you, and then for me to win, you have to lose. So, and I've encountered that so many times, and I've come to realize that that is just a story that we have told in our heads. So recently I had the same thing, but in this case, I was the one who someone came to and asked for a promotion. And she then told me that she had been thinking about this for months and months, and she had like prepared a speech for it, and she had said this, and if Timo says this, and etc. And I could see her as she was asking about that. I could see her almost rehearsing the line she had said. And then I was like, hey, so we're both trying to win, right? Like, if I give you a promotion, it's not as if now suddenly I've lost money. So together, let's now talk about how we can make you, because she basically wanted to go from the CMO, similar thing actually, CMO of a business to then being the CEO of one of our portfolio companies, because she thinks she can do a way better job, right? And she can. But then she was almost like really apprehensive about saying it. And I said, we both want this business to win. And so let's see how we can enable that to happen. And we just worked out a plan, like a 3-month plan, where she took on specific projects. And depending on how well those went, she would then become the CEO. She smashed it. And now she's a CEO. And she's just like, wow, I was up in bed just frantically thinking about the right things to say for months and months and months for a conversation which was just like, I want to be the CEO. How do we make it happen? That's it. Right? And for so many of us, we might be going for a title, a promotion, a career change. We should not try and go into conversations assuming that it's some kind of, for me to win, you have to lose, because that's just not what it is. The world of work is such a massive, massive place that like it is possible for both of you to win, as opposed to it being a zero-sum game.
Love it. So true. I mean, classic FUPO, for those of you that know what FUPO is, fear of other people's opinion, that we spend a lot of time not only focus on our own thoughts and feelings, but imagining the thoughts, feelings and responses of other people that don't exist. It's such a good piece of advice going into an interview. Any in-betweeners in the room? We always often think you go into an interview, they're trying to catch you out, that you're behind the desk of the enemy and you've got to think, and actually it's bollocks. They want you to be the guy. So you go in the room with that energy of they're looking for the guy to give this job to. So just walk in and, be that person. Love that. Energy management, just going back to your mood hoovers, I call them. It's something we talk a lot about, and Alex talked about before, is just that energy management. And I think you're absolutely right. Don't avoid it, lean into it, find out what's going on. But also choose when. Because if you're about to go on stage or do something really important and you're hanging out with a pot drainer or a mood hoover, you're going to, it takes it out of you. So it's all part of that energy management. These are all golden. You've talked about cheat codes, and you said that's from your book, What's Stopping You. Can you tell us what cheat codes are?
Okay. So the name of my book is What's Stopping You. You can get in all the bookshops. It's very cool to say. You can get in all the bookshops.
I'd recommend the audio book.
The audio
then
book.
you hear this voice. Your voice is so lovely. And you get the bonus of your voice as well as the content.
So I'm convinced Steve has a man crush on me.
I do.
You're absolutely right.
How could I not?
Yeah, so I wrote the book, What's Stopping You, and the whole idea is it's split into 11 chapters, and they are all called cheat codes. So some of the cheat codes, as we mentioned, where it's not that deep, that is a cheat code. The first cheat code is we are the stories that we tell ourselves. And the reason I wrote it is because I thought about myself as this 21-year-old insecure, self-doubting kid growing up on a South London council estate and almost thinking, how do I make sense of this world? It's now transpired that actually a lot of the people who love the book, because is now so close to 100,000 in the last 3 months or so, a lot of people who love the book are not the 21-year-old version of me. They are the people who feel stuck in some way. And stuck could be in a career, in a dynamic, in a relationship, and just something where they know they can do more and they know they can be more, but they're just trying to find the path out of that. And the reason they're called cheat codes is because when I was a kid, I used to game a lot. And I always was trying to find the third door, the cheat code. What is the combination of buttons that if you press, suddenly you go from level 3 to level 8, rather than going through the same path that everyone has? And I would say, my career has shown that I've basically been taking, I guess, career and mental shortcuts to get to somewhere much further. And I don't particularly think I'm special. I've never really thought like I'm some kind of big brain person. I've just gone, oh, okay, well, this is how the game apparently works. What if I just look through this door and see these cheat codes and go there, and then, oh, turns out you don't need to do this path. You can just go this path and then end up here. And so that's the reason why I call it cheat codes, and that's the main, that's the whole framework and the takeaways from the book.
And Steve, you love cheat codes, and you were talking about one of your own.
Yeah, I think in the context of energy and, as you grow in an organization, the biggest one for me is, and it's a movie analogy and it's cheesy, but I don't care. I always describe my team as Marvel Avengers, because what happens in your career when you're junior, you're probably doing 90% doing and 10% leading. You don't necessarily have a team, but you're still having to influence others. And as you get bigger responsibility, you can't have the same grip on the controls, right? And, my first role, I was managing Bird's Eye Beef Burgers, and it was about 10 SKUs. And by the end, it was like 3,000 SKUs over 22 countries, right? You can't possibly be in the detail. So you actually need the ambition to be 10% doing and 90% leading and orchestrating. And the trick is, just the people you have in your team. So, my team had media, innovation, market insight, this kind of thing, corporate affairs. And, I made it my main focus for my first 6 months was getting the best world-class Avengers with superpowers in those disciplines, right? And then just letting go. But I say Avengers because they need to assemble as well. They need to be able to work together. And if you crack that, then it's very manageable, in my opinion, because you have motivated people who want to lead and be empowered, and you're just there to support them, to orchestrate, to take the bigger picture. The hardest bit is in that mid-career, I would say, where you're like you're at the 50-50 leading, doing, and how do you start to it's quite hard to let go, because when you start doing that, not everything is done to your standards. Or, most of the time it's done to a better standard because you've got brilliant people doing it. That should be the aim. But sometimes there has to be some mistakes, and there needs to be space for that.
Yeah. It's a classic lesson in leadership that people don't realise, is that you just have to have people around you that are better than you. Yeah, that are better in their specialist areas. And often you feel, I've got to know the answers to everything. That's bollocks. Actually, I don't know as a leader is a really powerful statement. I don't know, but let me check with my team. And letting go of that ego of needing to be the cleverest, best at everything in the room is really powerful. I'm going to just ask the final question, and then I'm going to open it to the audience. One takeaway, there's been a lot. I mean, this has been like gold dust for learnings and tools, but what's one thing? A lot of people listening to the podcast are, at the moment, struggling, challenged, facing burnout. What's the one takeaway that people can apply immediately? What would it be? Timo, I'll start with you.
That is not that deep.
Love it.
That's it.
Not that deep.
It's just really not that deep.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a soundbite, Daniela, right there. Steve-O.
Probably, I didn't expand on it that much, but this idea, something very practical, and most people are marketeers here, is this idea of healthy marketing lifestyle. So, the question I'd ask everyone, look at your calendars. What are you doing to live a healthy marketing lifestyle? Because all those things that seem nice to-dos, they're actually, it's a strategic asset. Your energy and your time is a strategic asset, and you need to do that to be good at your job. And then if you do that, you'll also be more energized and be away from your desk and meetings and all that kind of stuff. You're out there being inspired, and it pays back to you and to the business as well. So healthy marketing lifestyle would be mine.
No one ever had the best creative idea of their career in, back-to-back meetings all day, in a trading meeting. I think paint the walls with "it's not that deep." Cover that. Listen, this has been absolutely brilliant. Timo, Steve-O, thank you so much. Audience, thank you. For those of... And for the people who are listening on the podcast, this has been Slow the Fuck Down. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the Slow the Fuck Down podcast with Glow London and The Drum. If you found this episode interesting and insightful, please help us spread the word by giving us a follow or sharing it with your friends. And if you feel inclined to give us a quick review, that would be awesome. Let's all do what we can to help the world slow the fuck down.